What the Bible really tells us is that when we say we believe in Jesus, we respond by giving our life to him. That he becomes, as Paul says, Lord of our life. That I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. That we become a branch that is, another area Scripture talks about, is grafted in to this relationship with Jesus Christ. That we now don't try to be a branch living on our own, but in fact, we become a branch that is connected to the vine, and the vine is what feeds us, the nourishment and the things of our life that help us produce. It's not enough to say, I believe in Jesus, and yet go about your life as if you don't. It simply isn't an option according to this passage. We have to be able to recognize in our own life and ask ourselves the question, is Jesus Lord of my life? Am I in that relationship with him? And let me just, I was going to say it towards the end, but let me just, because it's right here, tell you that it is the easiest thing to do, and yet it seems so hard. The Bible is very clear that in our brokenness, we say, God, I have not let you be Lord of my life. Jesus, I have not let you be Lord, and I need you to be. And that's it. I mean, and God takes that moment of where we genuinely want to be transformed and change, and we just kind of yield our will and our pride and our own control over and say, God, I'm letting you be the driver of this vehicle. I'm letting you be the vine of which I will now draw my nourishment from. Use any analogy that you want. And in that moment, it happens. That's the grace part. It's not like, okay, go out and do 100 Hail Marys and all these other things, and then eventually you'll get there. It happens in an instant. How do we know? Because what Jesus said is that because we begin to see the fruit. We see God working in our life. The third truth, though, so understand that, and I really want to invite you, if you don't get that, it's just got to set aside a pride. You don't have to have 1,000 reasons. I got to figure this out, figure that out. No, you don't. But if you need to talk through that, find someone to talk it through. And make it, because that's critical to understand the seasons. It's critical to have that. But the third truth in here, and which really sets up for this season, is that God shapes us through these seasons so that we can produce. He describes this gardener as being active in the garden. God is actively at work. He's pruning and working the crops. And like a farmer, he's always at work in every season, realizing the importance of every season and what's going on. Let me just give you a teaser. Let me know when I go as long as Scott. But right now I think I'm okay. It's a loving comment. Yeah, I'm over. Now, but let me give you a teaser about the seasons, because I really want us to get this. This is the thing I want us to understand, is that because I see in myself the fact that God has, I'm in seasons of my life, but I don't embrace the season and say, what am I supposed to gather out this season? Instead, I'm thinking, boy, I wish I was in that season. And we miss out. We end up kind of going through a season of life, and we just really didn't glean everything we could have out of it because we didn't embrace it. And so let me give you the little teaser that we're going to find out. First of all, winter. In the farming business, as an almond farmer, winter is critical. If you don't have a good winter, the crop is just not going to be good at all. Because in the winter, and the cold is needed to be able to, first the leaves drop off, the cold is needed, and so that the nutrients move back into the roots. And when that happens, a couple things. The farmer can go through and cut the dead wood and can prune heavily the tree and kind of shape it for the coming year. Much easier than if the nutrients are in there, which could hurt the tree. But more importantly, the nutrients go in so that the root system is developed, that the root system grows bigger and stronger so that the tree comes out bigger and stronger in the following. And while externally in the winter it looks like the thing is dead, there's activity in the foundation underneath, all over the place, that are vital. And if the temperature doesn't get down and that tree doesn't go dormant, it affects the rest of the season. There are times in our life, I believe, certainly I've experienced it, where life seems cold and dark, where there's no sign of life. and I don't know what in the world God is doing. And maybe the mistake is to think, how do we get out of this? Instead of thinking, okay, God is maybe wanting us to focus inwardly deeper in our faith. Because honest, if you looked at times in your life where your faith, the foundation of your life, grew the strongest, I bet the answer would be winter. And there are things that can be focused on less about what we do, more about just pondering and contemplating and really focusing in on God, that happen in winter, that if you don't take advantage of that, you miss it when you go through that. Spring is a sign of new growth, planting seeds, things like that. New growth comes out, and spring is a great time because weather's starting to change, things are starting to look a little better, but oftentimes there's new shoots and new things that are happening. In our own life, sometimes we see things happening, and it's out of a comfort zone. It's something new happening to us, and we're, I want to go there. I mean, God's stretching me about love, or God's stretching me about kindness and all these things. But there are moments where God is pushing us out into something new, something fresh, something alive. And it becomes an exciting time. Don't necessarily see the fruit yet, but we kind of see some stuff where God is going. Summer, of course, is it's fruit time. It's the heart of the growth. Gets a little hot, a lot of activity. Summertime there's continual pruning. Spring and summer, as a farmer, there's still a lot of pruning. You got suckers going on you got to pull off who are sapping the strength. Weeding starts to come about you got to do to make sure the crop goes. But when it comes to the tree and the crop, you start to see the fruit for what it is. And in the midst of summer, harvest time can last for months where you're just gleaning and you're beginning to see things happening. I get it now. I see what God has done. This is a great time because exciting things are happening. And it's just an enjoyable time. Fall is a transition. Fall, everything's starting to turn again. The crop, you're coming to the end of what you had. So it's a celebration of what has happened. You can look back and think, wow, there was some great stuff that had happened. But also it's looking forward and preparing for what's light ahead. You're setting aside, you're doing stuff because you're seeing that, wow, there's some changes that's going to happen. Here's what I think really is important about fall. God, if you know through Scripture, just knows that we are people who love ruts. And the greatest example is the Israelites walking around the desert. I read this in one of our years where he says, okay, when God picks up and move, we move. And about the pillars of fire and stuff. And the story, and I think it's in Exodus, where it says, okay, sometimes God stayed 1 day. Sometimes God stayed 10 days and he moved. Sometimes God didn't even stay the whole day and he moved. It was like God saying, look, I don't want to do anything twice because I know what you guys are going to do. Oh, there's a pattern. Why don't we put it in a book and let's go start it somewhere else? He knows that we have a tendency to want to figure God out. And so the fall is a great time to realize that as great of a production of love and joy that came out of that experience with me, we're moving on, Mark. Because I don't want you to think it's about what you're doing here that makes the difference. I want you to experience it in a new way. And so we're going to move through the seasons back into winter, celebrate what's gone, but also be excited in anticipation of even a better crop that comes out as we move back through. Every one of those seasons are critical to the maturity and the spiritual formation of our life. And the more we can embrace them, the more we can glean so much out of them. So here's the challenges that I want to give us over these next few weeks. First of all, to look for the fruit being produced in your life. As Jesus said, it affirms your relationship with Him. And I think it's important for us to be able to do that self-assessment and see, where is God working? Where have I seen Him working? And to use it as a way, Paul says in Colossians, to work out our salvation. It's not because he said that we have to work for salvation. He says because the more you pursue your relationship with Christ and the more you see the fruit being produced in your life, the more assurance you have that God is a gardener and you are at work. He's at work in you. And so it's encouraging to be able to look back and see, I see where God's been working on me. I see the changes that are happening. I see these moments where God is at work.